So in this video, what we're going to do is going to talk about how to hit from the inside, and in particular, things that I do and other professional golfers do to make that happen so they can hit a nice draw down the fairway. But let's take a look at Steve Stricker. Steve Stricker is a golfer who's in really good form, and I thought he'd be a nice relatable golfer for some of us to look at. So he has a driving distance of about 260 yards. So he certainly hits the golf ball a long way, but as opposed to somebody like Rory McIlroy or Bryson DeChambeau, who's sort of plus 300, I thought he'd be quite a relatable sort of person to try and learn from. Now, obviously he does a number of things particularly well in his golf swing, but the area that I really want us to focus on is the arms in the start to the downswing. So as he sort of swings back and gets the club into a really good position, but what we can see is the way that he quite literally just allows the club to drop as he starts the downswing. Now the key thing here is what this arm is doing, so what his right arm does. Now I see a lot of confusion with golfers with what they're supposed to do at the start of the downswing, and I think for the driver it's absolutely fine to get the feeling that your arms are dropping as long as the structure of your arm stays the same. So what I mean by this is he's not pulling the club down to the point where the right arm ends up getting stuck, because this promotes a steepening in the club shaft, which makes you kind of swing too much over the top. What he does is he makes sure that this arm, so his right arm, drops down as he initiates the downswing, and then obviously as he continues this journey down in towards the latter part of the downswing, you can see the way that this forearm stays pointing up towards the sky very late. Again, these are movements that are helping golfers hit it from the inside, and what we don't want to do is, like I say, is have a temptation to do this, because then that club's going to be moving over and outside the target line rather than this type of arm structure where the club can drop on the inside. This feeling is really commonplace. So we've seen Rory McIlroy talk about one of his favourite drills is a split handle exercise. So if you place your hands on the golf club about shoulder width apart, turn your trail hand so it's facing up towards the sky, and he just talks about this sort of feeling of letting again the arms drop down. But can you see the way this is facing towards you guys? So again, this is pointing up. At no stage is he demonstrating this drill doing anything like this. Sergio Garcia, somebody again has sneaky distance and also incredible accuracy with the driver, talked very much about the feeling of allowing the arms to drop coming in towards the downswing position. And probably one of the most iconic characters, Canadian golf pro Mo Norman, used to talk a lot about this sort of feeling as well, of really sort of dropping and trying to really exasperate this feeling of keeping that forearm pointing up. And again, the reason for this is if at any stage you lose that arm structure and you start doing this, as opposed to this motion, that's how you're going to hit it from the inside. So now we understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. Let's talk about some useful tips and exercises that will help you do that. So what I've done as a drill, and what I would suggest that you guys practice with, is I have used the highest rubber tee that I could possibly find. Now you can see the way that this tee is kind of quite literally about 2 club heads distance in terms of the depth of the tee. But that's what I want you to do, because obviously when we're sort of talking about these sort of common problems of amateur golfers and moving this way and this sort of, you know, swinging from the outside, your temptation will be to obviously tee the golf ball much lower. But if you now start experimenting with the feelings we talked about in this video, because if this arm stays like so, then you can see the way, see where my club head is. So it helps the club head drop from the inside, and then therefore what you're going to practice is just trying to clip the upper part of the tee, and you need to do that for that coordination. So you can see here as I make some sort of short practice swings, I try and do it slowly so you guys can see this arm structure in here, up on the tee, up on the tee. So it's not that's the big thing that you don't want to have, and that's why these tees are really good for this, so they give you that really loud echoing sound. Now if you guys don't have that, then what you can do is just make some practice swings where you're consciously just trying to swing a good sort of 3 inches up in the air, and then when you go to the driving range, practice with a higher tee. Now especially go to the extreme, and then you can always lower it to something that is realistic as time goes on. But in terms of a drill, this is a really good one to get that feeling of maintaining this position. There's one last thing that you do need to be careful of, that you need to make sure you practice as well. Simply just practicing getting the club face square. So when you start moving your arm more this way, what will happen is that your club face is going to have more of a temptation to want to open. Now what I mean by open, just pointing to the right of the target for a right-handed golfer. So when you're making these practice swings, you're going to find this sort of part of hitting up on the golf ball probably very easy. However, the problem is if you don't really sort of train yourself to simultaneously close the club face, then what you're going to end up doing is just sort of hitting the ball miles offline. And then if you don't realise the reason why it's gone offline is because of the club face, then the temptation will be to return back to your old type of swing, and then all of a sudden this practice will be worth absolutely nothing. So when you're doing this type of exercise, you do need to just make sure that as you're coming in towards this latter part, this downswing, that you are rotating your arms to square the face. And we see this with professional golfers, and I would say with inside golf instruction, it's an area that kind of gets forgotten. You do need to rotate your arms. We can see this here as an example. By the time the pros get the club shaft parallel, we normally see that the hands are located somewhere over the trail thigh. They'll then take this down another stage, so the hands progressively get further ahead of the golf ball. And this stays the same on all clubs. And then from here, the way the club goes from this position to on the back of the golf ball is an element of rotation. See, as I rotate my arm, that brings the club around to square that club face. So, thinking about the start of the downswing, absolutely. Focus on keeping that forearm pointing up towards the sky. That's going to help you get that feeling of hitting it from the inside. But you have to practice squaring the club face. Otherwise, you're never going to see that draw shape that you desire. If you've tried this before and you feel like you've struggled with it for whatever reason, then this is why I recently set up my membership site. So if you were to head over to the website, you guys might be interested in joining as well. You can work directly with me, or also I've set up a community where we do things like share our own videos, and I offer feedback to make sure that you are working on the right thing, because quite often you may just need a little bit of encouragement that you're moving in the right sort of direction, and you don't necessarily need to return back to the old type of golf swing. I see that all the time with students, that they are very, very close to making the change, but they're just missing a little ingredient similar to what I concluded the video on with things like the club face rotation, and it can make a huge difference. Till next time, I'll see you then.